is up, Ham Radio? Kilo Echo 8, Papa Zulu November, the Ham Radio Adventure Guy, and it is Hump Day. That means it's time for the Hump Day Happy Hour. We got a great show tonight. Going off the rails normally. I told somebody the other day, we're doing a show not about POTA. And somebody said, oh, so you're doing soda. I was like, no. So we're going way off the rails this time. We're going to be talking 3D printing for ham radio. I'm really excited about it. Before we do that, we do the ritual YouTube stuff. Make sure and subscribe, smash the like button, and click that notification bell if you have not already. And follow us on social media. Shout out to our newest Patreons. Without you guys, I couldn't run around the country acting like the idiot that I am and doing all this cool ham radio stuff. So I appreciate you guys. And we also want to give a shout out to the top 10 donors in the Adventurers Club. Guys, we got a couple more weeks before this quarter is over, and then we'll be drawing for that prize. And I was thinking about it today, and I got a lot of special stuff. I'm probably going to do something not prize-wise, but something special for the top 3 people because they've constantly put it in there. But all 10 of you are still eligible for the main prize and everything. So shout out for that. And it does not matter how you donate for that. It can be Patreon. It can be buy me a slice of pizza, tip jar, whatever you guys want to do. We don't care. But thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. All right, we're going to bring out our guest. This guy, most of you should know, he has his own YouTube channel called North Country Ham. And what's going on, Aaron?
Hey, thanks a lot, James, for having me on, and evening all. Good to see everybody on the chat there going around.
Oh, Roger that. Well, man, I really appreciate you coming on. You know, I've seen some of your stuff that you've made, and you do a really excellent job. But before we get into 3D printing, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you into ham radio.
Well, I think in a way I've always been kind of interested. I know I was active duty Coast Guard for 15 years, so I was always running on the waterways, doing all the marine bands, working the Motorola radios on the boats and the ships and everything. So I always kind of had a background there, working that kind of thing, and got out, and of course got some of my wife's family or father-in-law. You know, he's an extra class, and he's always really into it too. So it kind of pushed me more and more into that, and finally got my license March of 2019. So I've only had it 2 years now. So
listen, it's not how long you've had it; it's how much you've put into it. You know, because you know I haven't had mine that long either, but I've came on the ham radio like a storm, and I try to learn every bit of knowledge that I possibly can, and just like soak it all up. And there's just so much to ham radio, and there's something for everybody.
Yeah.
And I really enjoy it. So, what's your favorite part of ham radio?
I've kind of got a little bit of all the aspects, really. I've really enjoyed doing the POTA, even though I've only been able to go out and do a few activations myself, just because of time-wise with job and all. But doing that and kind of really getting into the portability side of it and just kind of figuring out my equipment and fine-tuning that. I've really enjoyed field day with the club. I think that was really what piqued my interest to get me more portable doing the field day. That first one was just kind of like, yep, I want to get into this more. But I'm definitely like you. I start a hobby, I seem to jump in both feet and right to my neck deep in it all. So it's definitely got the bug and wants me to keep pushing.
Hey, it's the only way to do it. I mean, we were talking. That's like we were talking this morning in my Discord, and one of the guys, because I told him, I said I got to get new tires, and I just put tires on this thing back in November, and he said there's got to be something wrong, which he did end up being something wrong. So he was kind of right. But I told him, I said, nah, about every 6 months since I've started Parks on the Air, that's what I do. He's like, dude, you would have to do like 60,000 miles in 6 months. And I was like, Oh, that's child's play. I was like, you have no idea. Like like I spend so much money in gas
Yeah.
and tires and maintenance on my vehicle. It is just retarded. But yeah, it ended up being I'm going to have to get a wheel bearing too. So
Oh boy.
fun, fun,
Well,
fun, fun.
you've drove the wheels right off from it. That's all.
I, I'm tickled that I've got to get a wheel bearing now because normally when I got a big ham fest planned, the week before. Matter of fact, when I was supposed to go to Shelbyville last year, my driver's front wheel bearing went out.
Oh.
When I was supposed to go to Huntsville last year, my passenger front wheel bearing went out. So I'm kind of glad that it's not the week before Dayton and that's happened. Which I
Yeah.
took a train to Hamcation. I wasn't taking any chances.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, that definitely sounds like you're driving the wheels right off it constantly.
man, people ask me, "Do you sleep in the parks?" And I'm like, sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like I sat in the park a little bit ago for 35 minutes watching the Lightning app. Like, man, you didn't cost me my early shift. Now you better let me do late shift. And finally, I got my late shift in. And
Oh.
really shout out to all the hunters who hunted me tonight because I put it on the spotting. I was like, I'm watching the app, guys. This might be quick, and they didn't play around. They just to the point, 73, and we were done. So
Yeah,
shout out to them. But
it's always great having the hunters out there for sure when
yeah,
you knock them out like that.
I love my hunters for sure.
Yeah.
But the portable aspect has kind of got me into wanting to build stuff, and make stuff for to be more portable and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of what started drawing me to 3D printing. And I've seen a few things that you've made, but tell us a little bit about what got you into the 3D printing.
Well, just the simple fact that if I have something that I see or want to make, I can make it myself instead of having to buy it. Or if I got, you buy a project box or something for an antenna you're doing, but you're like, I wish I had this or this to it. You can basically make it for yourself. And that's really been the draw for me is anything I can think up that I want to try to make for ham radio, I can draw it out or take an idea from something and tweak it and print it for myself and just make it work for how I need it. So that's probably been the biggest thing is just anything I can think up, I can try to make. So it's
Right. So I mean, I'm sure most people are familiar with some of your work because pretty much everybody watches Ham Radio Clubhouse, and the little challenge coins or whatever that you made for the clubhouse, man, them things are really really cool. I mean, what gave you the idea to make a challenge coin like 3D printed style?
Well, I've got a bunch from the service, the big heavy metal coins, challenge coin wise, and I was like, then you see some of the 3D printing YouTube channels I was watching, they've got these maker coins that they do just to basically it's a test on the printer. You try to, they're collectible kind of things that they'll make, but it's almost like they do it to challenge the settings on the printer to try to see how well you can get it to print. So I kind of like, I like that idea. And if I can come up with something that's almost like a little collectible thing, and if I can make it look nice and work great, then that's awesome, And I was kind of basically shooting out to just almost make one for my channel. And then I, with the Ham Radio Clubhouse, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try to surprise these guys. What do you guys? I sent it to Beer Snack. I said, "What's your thoughts on this?" And he seemed to really like it. So I made 6 of them up and sent them in the mail to them, and they just started raving about it from there, which I was kind of surprised at. I was like, well, must be pretty decent if they're that excited about it, like it that much. So and then we've made a few more from to do giveaways. So it's kind of cool, and I enjoy making them, so it's even beneficial to me. So
Right. So what's the most of the software for the 3D printers, to my knowledge, is open source.
yeah,
They've got the thingamajig I believe is what it's called. And
Yep, Thingiverse, which is
think
just basically somewhere you can search for something that somebody's already designed for the printer, to where all you got to do is download the file and put it in the printer and hit print. So, but
so. What's the learning curve to say go from the Thingiverse to actually designing your own and doing it yourself? What kind of learning curve are we talking about? Because most people can do the Thingiverse. Like you said, it's
all right,
just download to it and go.
it really, my experience on it was just figuring out whatever kind of CAD program you want to use. A lot of what I've done so far has just been on Tinkercad, which is just you go to the website, create a you create a login, and you can just start taking pictures or whatever and designing things. And that's kind of where I started with it. I've got a bunch of different CAD programs downloaded in my computer. I just haven't used them a lot yet. I've been kind of really figuring out, and Tinkercad, for as basic as it is really pretty good web-based CAD program. And it's really you design, you take the shapes and make them what you want and put them on the screen, and you can, when you pull it out, download it from there, it puts it right into the file that you need to put in your software for the printer. That software basically takes the item and just generates the code that the printer needs. Basically, they call it a slicing program. It basically tells the printer, do this at each layer, and that's probably been the biggest thing, is just figuring out the CAD and then applying the settings that you've kind of learned that works the best for your printer and what you do to that file. So it hopefully you come out with a good product at the end. And a lot of the stuff I've done, I've usually printed it, checked it over, made some tweaks, reprint it. You kind of just keep doing trial and error until you get a final product that you're happy with. So that's been the biggest thing, is just figuring out some of those CAD programs and getting it to correlate to what you want.
Right. So you've been into building stuff for a while. Like I mean, I've watched your channel for a while, and you're
Thank you.
always building things and stuff like that. And have you ever been just sitting there doing a project or a kit or something like that, and been like, you know what, I could make something that would work better on
Mhm.
my printer and use it, and just went from that ideal and just made the kit better by yourself?
I'm still kind of working on that stuff a little bit, as far as I haven't printed it yet, but I bought some project boxes off Amazon. They're like a 2.5 by like 4-inch box, about 2 inches deep, that I bought a bunch of, like half dozen of them to make, and I took a couple of them, make my own end fed half wave antennas. I did a 40 meter with a 49-to-1 in there. I made one for myself, and then made one, sent it to my father-in-law, and he uses it and loves it. And I got looking at that box, and I'm like, I could, if I do take that box, put it on the CAD, and kind of make some tweaks to it and how I want, I can print them for myself instead of buying them now, and current project I'm doing is pretty much making my own dipole little assembly for my pickup truck, because the wife doesn't want to see an antenna on it. So I'm getting sneaky and creative, I guess you could say. I'm making a little dipole that will mount to the cross frames on the tonneau cover underneath, so you won't see the antenna. I'm just going to make a 2 meter 70 cm dual band dipole that basically will attach to the one center frame going across the bed of the truck, where it's completely underneath. You won't see it, and as long as I can make it tune well when I get it all together, I think it'll make a nice antenna for a pickup truck that nobody will even know you got it. So that's the current project. It actually, I started out just a basic prototype shape right there, and I've got it where the 239 that with the the mount and kind of inlets and stuff, and did a little test fit. And this is closer to the final project. Basically, I've kind of tweaked based on sizing for the holes, to realign a little better, and I've got it where basically the amount on studs for the positive, negative, and then go out each side, and trying to make it where to mount underneath to the rail and hook into the little I-beam side of it, and possibly either 2 little bolts into the side, and it's on the underneath. And then of course I made a couple little dog bone type insulators for it, because I think doing wire with like a bungee to each side would be better, given how the wind always pushes down on the tonneaus, than trying to do like a straight aluminum element on each side. But that's the current project that's kind of going when I'm not printing some other stuff. So, I kind of I think it up, I guess, and try to make it come real. So we'll see how that'll end up. I got to reprint a whole new thing because I made some changes to it after doing a test fit, and we'll see how it comes. And hopefully that'll be something posted on the channel, just showing some of the process and the build and what it looks like on the truck when it's finalized. Hopefully that's the end result that I'm hoping for.
So. Awesome stuff. And speaking of your channel, Plasma, I know you're out there in the chat. If you don't care, drop a link into the chat for his channel in case anybody's not subscribed. So you're also kind of currently working on another project with a guy from your club, and it sounded really interesting. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we watched some different YouTube channels and stuff, and the last field day, the handful of some of the members that were trying to make satellite contacts weren't having the best of luck, and they're like, a couple of them out there together holding the antennas, trying to rotate and trying to talk on the handhelds at the same time, and just weren't doing real well. And we were talking about it, like, why don't we try to, too bad we couldn't come up with something that could just sit there and you could hook it up to like one of our 991s that we've got that we, a couple of us have that we usually take to field day, be able to sit there and let something else do the work for it. So in my typical fashion, I started YouTubing and researching and found something that I liked and talked it over with a friend of mine, and it kind of stemmed into me printing it myself, because the parts that they had you can't buy anymore. There was they discontinued the actual pan and tilt system, so we made our own. I designed it on Tinkercad and printed it out and did a couple of test fits, and kind of have a working. This is it right here. I've got it mounted where it sits right in a camera tripod. Everything that's blue, I designed and printed together. And you can see that it rotates on a 360 servo here, and then rotates the element for elevation on the top servo. This part works phenomenal. We're the friend of mine and I are now in the building the sketch for the Arduino to get it working. The one sketch, because we wanted to try to do our own sketch instead of just using what we found on the guy's website. And the one he's got from the original is quite extensive. But we actually, over the past weekend, had this working with the original sketch to give us, because I wasn't getting it to work myself, and he come over and we tinkered a little bit, and it was actually trying to track a satellite that was coming overhead and making a pass.
That is awesome.
Yeah,
that's
one
really
thing
cool.
we did find is, because of the orientation of my elevation servo motor, we got to change something in the settings, because instead of being almost at the horizon pointing, it was pointing 90 degrees the wrong way. So we might have to do something in the software, because I orientated the servo differently the way this is designed than what their sketch has. But this has been by far probably as we were talking earlier, probably my most exciting build so far that I've been doing, that designed all 8 pieces separately, and they all interfit. They kind of slide and fit together. And I was pretty happy with how close of a tolerance I've got. Like you can see, I don't know if it'll show on the camera, in the very top here, you can see the 2 little squares on all 4 sides. Well, you pull those 2 screws out, and that whole plate slides off from those. No, it's basically a tab system, and it'll come right apart and you can put it right back together. So if something breaks, I can reprint that part and reassemble it. So it's kind of being done almost completely modular. So it's been probably the most rewarding project so far.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, guys. But when we were talking before the show, and Aaron told me said I don't know if you picked the right guy. I'm a beginner at this. That don't look like a beginner project to me. I mean, designing all 8 parts and getting it all together, and even having it close to working. I mean, that's pretty amazing, and that's really cool. I
Yep.
mean, because that's the problem. A lot of people have with satellites is getting it to turn.
Yep.
With the satellite and stuff like that, and I want to do some satellites, and I haven't got to get out and do it myself yet, but I have watched some people, and I've watched some people fail epically. And then when I was at Hamcation, I watched this guy. Matter of fact, all of us filmed the guy, and we seen it done right. And I mean, it's really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I haven't made any satellite contacts myself, but I was like, I want to. Well, I'm going to make something for myself. I think that's the big part of the hobby that everybody really enjoys is you see a need, you fill a need for yourself and build it for the hobby, and you enjoy it that much more. And it seems to be the general consensus among the community, I think. And it's just kind of neat to do.
yeah, I mean that's just really cool. I
Yeah.
mean, I like to try to build things and stuff like that, and I get that from my dad. And
Yeah.
at the club, we all sort of have the ongoing joke about my dad,
Yeah.
which he's passed away. But you know, they would tell me, he said he would bring this pile of stuff and set it on the table, and we'd all be like, "What is he doing with all this trash?" You know, and he just put this big pile of stuff, and the next thing you know, he's like, "All right, well, this is what it does," and he starts showing us. And they said it just do the most crazy exotic stuff
Yeah.
that you ever did see, and like he had, I mean, like that's like I have a random wire dipole in my
Yeah.
front yard, and you know it don't look fancy at all. But I'll tell you what, that thing it's amazing how good it works.
Yeah.
I'm never home to use it. I'm always in the field.
Right. Right.
but I mean he just and he had bags and bags and containers full of all kinds of this. I'm like, and I need something, and I know he's got it here, but I don't know where it's at,
Right.
and it drives me
That's
crazy. But
that's
but
the that's the kind of Elmer we all wish for, by the sounds of it, for sure.
yeah.
And
One of the guys at the club, actually, the other weekend at a ham fest, he was sitting there telling me, he said, "Yeah," he said, "we were sitting there one time," he said, "and your dad tuned up a bicycle rim for I forget what band." And I said, "Here, this is resonant," and he said, "And it was," and we made contacts on a bicycle rim.
wow,
And
that's just
I'm like, that don't surprise me about him. I mean,
it, and it's an everyday object you would never think of trying to use.
and
Wow.
that's just what he did. But I mean, you know, 3D print with 3D printing, people can take it to the different level. So, what's it take for somebody to get started? Of course, you need the printer.
Right.
What else do you need?
Really, that's kind of it. As long as you've got a, you know a laptop or computer to use the slicing program, that's really the only other thing outside the printer, to be honest with you, because everything else came in the box with the printer when I opened it. Of course, like I told you, it was a subtle hinted Christmas gift from the wife. I gave her the hint and the direction, and I just had to open it that day. I mean, the printer come in there with a couple of miscellaneous tools for that you might need, and a little thumb drive SD card for it, and that's really all it has for memories. you use the SD card to put the file on and plug it in the computer or in the printer and hit print. So it's the printer I've got. It's the Ender 3 Pro, and I've made a couple of little upgrade and changes to it, as far as some of the extruder drive stuff. And other than that, anything else that's on, it's all been printed by that printer. I kind of, there's all kinds of open source things that you can find on Thingiverse and everything else for mods or upgrades that will make it, like I put a ball bearing type spool holder on it. So the spool actually can free spin easily with two 8mm ball bearings, excuse me. And that way the filament can feed easier into the machine. Things like that, you can print right on the printer yourself and not have to buy it. So that's always neat. But that printer, you can get it probably with almost all the bells and whistles they allow on it for less than $300 on Amazon right now. So it's not super expensive to get into if you're looking to try to do it. I mean, I built, like I said, I was looking at it and always wanted one for years. Always wanted to try to be able to print and make things for myself, and finally did it. So I've been pretty happy with it since. So it's all about learning the little settings that make it work the best and tweaking it. And from there, it's all pretty easy because the program to use on the computer is, they show you right where to download it. There's no cost to it. So it's, like I said, and you can find other slicing type programs out there that are at no charge, no cost, and it's all open source. And it's literally, you put the file into that program, you tell it the settings, how you want it to print, and it generates the code, and then you plug the card in the printer and hit print, and it's that simple, really. I mean, it seemed quite daunting at first, but once you do a couple of prints, you kind of get the feel for it, and it's going from there. So, and
so
I did see,
from box to your first print, how long did it take you?
probably about 2 hours. It took about 2 hours to put it together because it comes unassembled in the box. You actually got to build the printer. The main bottom with the Y-axis track and the bed were together, but the upright rails, the top rails, the actual Z-axis gantry and extruder head, and the actual little display, all of that you had to mount onto the printer and put it all together and plug it all in. Some of the, and it was all well labeled, so it was fairly easy to follow the instructions and do. And it took probably about 2 to maybe just over 2 hours to put it fully together. And I started doing a couple of test prints that they have right on the SD card that comes with it. I plugged it in and turned it on, got the temperatures up, and I hit print and started doing test print just to see how it was going to come out and if I could make anything work off the bat. So I was kind of surprised that it was that short of a time, really. So
Good
but
deal.
you
Good
didn't
deal.
have to use any of the software because they already had those test prints, so to speak, already on the card. So from there, it's just figuring out, okay, what's the next step. So
Okay.
it's not hard to get into, not quite as much as some might think. I was surprised.
So tell us a few things that you've made for yourself for ham radio.
Well, the
I
first
mean,
thing,
I know you showed us your projects, but
the first thing I've made for myself is, like I said, I made my own end-fed half wave, and the little insulator that I put at the end of it, I cut out of a $2 cutting board. Cut the shape, kind of did like an oval shape with larger holes in it. But I wanted to kind of put almost like a built-in strain relief into that insulator. So I, essentially I had 2 larger holes at the bottom with 2 little, like, smaller holes above that, perpendicular to them, and then a bigger hole at the top to put a little snap hook in. So that way I kind of feed the wire in one hole, back out, then one above it, and almost loop it through the 2 smaller holes above that, and then kind of weave it back through to give you a nice little strain relief almost. And I liked how that worked, so I designed it on Tinkercad and printed them out. Of course, I printed out in 2 different sizes because on my end feds, I use 22 gauge, that super soft silicone wire, and I've had good luck with that. But some people use up to a larger gauge, so I've got these that I printed. You can see how I got
Here.
one for the 22 gauge up to a 22 gauge, and this one probably go up to a 12 gauge. But essentially, I run my wire down through this hole, comes back up through the next one, and then kind of in and back out, and then back in and back out, and then I usually heat shrink it, and it gives you, you can put a snap hook in there, and it gives you almost like a built-in strain relief on it. And that's probably the first thing that I made for myself. And then probably the next step I got into was making my own little larger, just dog bone type insulator for, it's about 3¼ inches long. And, just to do like for a simple dipole. That was probably the first things that I kind of did up and made for myself.
Roger that. So
it's all been uphill from there.
So you're telling me that I won't have to be at a ham fest and be like, well, I've got to buy something and go hunting down dog bones no more. I don't know what it is about dog bones, but it seems like every ham fest I go, I have to pick up a couple one more. I have no idea why, but
see, I didn't want to have to, so now I just make it on demand.
Make it on demand. I like it.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of. I mean, of course, I've got a bunch of different style of those coins. I made it so because I'm like I was telling you beforehand, I was kind of setting up an Etsy shop to possibly sell some of the prints and make it so it's customizing. So I've got, a basic one similar to theirs that just says your radio club here, and then you can put a call sign on it. So that way it would look similar to, like, this is one that I made for my radio club, my local club. It says Thousand Islands Repeater Club, and then the club's call sign in there. And that's similar to what the Ham Radio Clubhouse coin is. And then of course I got one that I made for my channel, North Country Ham, a little different antenna on it. And the next one I got into, my son's was in Boy Scouts. I was one of the assistant leaders there, and he made his Eagle Scout. So I kind of started wanting to make something for him personalized. So I've made a coin like this one. If I can get the camera to focus there. It says Eagle Scout around it. It's got the Boy Scout emblem, his name and his troop number, and then the date that he did his border review and officially made Eagle Scout. And I'm going to kind of put stuff like that on the Etsy shop where it just says, what a name here or whatever, and you fill in the fields of how you want it customized. And my thoughts were I'd kind of go into the CAD program, make it, the optional entries into that, and then send like a proof for, for whoever to look at it and say, yep, I like that, print it and send it to them. So, that's just stuff I'm always thinking, always trying to build something, I guess. And
you'll probably do really good with it with the Etsy shop and stuff, because I mean, one thing about hams, they always want something new with their call sign on it. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but we love our call sign to be everywhere. I mean, for example, I have my call sign,
right,
3D printed.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if you can see it or not, but I have my call sign.
Looks like on a Lego block.
It's on a Lego block engraved with my call sign from Legoland. I went there last year and actually made a 2-meter to repeater contact while riding a roller coaster. Now, mind you, I tried to film that and that didn't work at all.
Oh boy,
that didn't work at all.
I don't know if I got something.
Uh-oh. Well, we have dropped Aaron, and he will probably be right back, I'm sure. But while he is gone, Anybody got any? Here he comes. Anybody got any questions that they would like to ask? Go ahead and start dropping them in the chat.
Sorry about
Welcome
that.
back.
Yeah, I went to click something and it disappeared on me. So
Hey, I did that one night. After the stream, I have a happy hour after dark for my Patreons. As a matter of fact, Patreons, the link's already in Patreon and in the Discord Patreon chat. But one night we were sitting there talking, and I went to click something, and I totally just wiped out the whole Patreon stream.
oh,
And we had to all take it over to Discord chat that night.
oh
But
boy.
I was
Yeah,
like, oh man.
that's never good. I was gonna try to see if I can't get it to show to share my screen if I was gonna be able to.
You should have a button down there.
Well, that's what I went to hit, and that's what closed me out.
You hit share and it closed you out. That's
Yeah.
bad.
All right. Well,
There it is.
Okay. Now, this is something that I've been kind of working on to put on your ham shack desk. It makes it look kind of like a little radio. And it's hollow. And it's basically like a 4-inch by 6 inches. And probably, I don't remember how deep it ended up going to be, but where it could be customized, put your call sign on the spectrum and change whatever frequency you want it to read. I thought it was a neat little, like either storage or little planter box for the ham shack desk.
Absolutely, and that's something that hams would buy.
And
I mean,
the other idea I had on it is I made a lid for it, and I was going to print it in clear or translucent filament and put an LED inside. So
nice.
But that's the idea. But something like that right there, when I first put it in the software, was going to end up being probably 15, 16 hour print. So I haven't printed it yet.
Oh yeah, and that's another question. Before I ask that question though, Brian wanted to know if you wanted him to drop the link to your shop in the chat. I guess he has it.
I've got it. It's all kind of I just got my Photoshop little box for taking better pictures, because any of the pictures I've tried to take, always some kind of a glare or shadow, and they don't look real good. So now I got a little pop-up photo box. So I'm going to actually make the pictures for the items look a lot nicer. But
right. I mean, you don't have to.
I don't remember I don't have the link right handy.
Okay.
It's that new. I just kind of been just setting it up. So I think I might have posted it on my channel on my last video, and I don't even know if I've got it handy, what it is. But it's on Etsy. If you type in NCH Productions, you'll find it on Etsy, I think. It's
okay.
I haven't sold anything yet, but I haven't advertised or anything. This is the most I've talked about it probably since I started it. And it's been kind of just slowly, as I get some things printed, to take some pictures type of thing. So that's why I haven't even that doesn't even show on the shop yet, because I haven't printed it. I'm waiting until I actually print the item so I can show a realistic one of it. So
right.
there's always something in works.
Plasma Storm's already saying he wants one with the LED light in it. But you were saying something about it taking 20 hours. So, and that was one of the questions that I had, because I've heard, different things taking long periods of time. The printers, they're fairly safe to leave printing and not have issues.
I haven't had a problem yet, really, for anything like that. Especially if you said I went, like I said, I went all out. I took a Raspberry Pi and I've got it mounted on the back of my printer. I printed a case for it, and it's actually mounted right into the rails like everything else is on the printer. And I installed what they call Octoprint on the Raspberry Pi. And essentially, let me try to, well, you can see it on my screen that I just switched over. This is Octoprint, and it controls the printer.
You talk about the screen for that you want to share?
Yeah. It should be. I think it's still. Yep.
There we go.
This is Octoprint on my computer, and I can control it from my phone anywhere I'm at. So if I'm out in town running errands and I see something going wrong, I can actually cancel the print and stop it and
No, nice.
come home and fix it. So this is installed on the actual printer, and it's running and I can actually time lapse the different things I've printed. I don't know where. Well, right here. I don't know if it'll do it. Right there's a time lapse of the print of the coin that I just did for Ham Radio Clubhouse over the last. This coin took a little over 3 hours, and it's just a quick time lapse that you can watch on the webcam. It's just a little Raspberry Pi webcam that I've got installed on it. That I can, when you log into Octoprint remotely on your phone or whatever, you can see the camera and see how the print's going too. So you can really track and see how it's running and how it's working if there's something wrong. So that's very handy, and I think it just makes it that much more less of a more of a comfort level. It's kind of just about done. It's basically that 3-hour print. It's condensed in like less than a minute video.
That's really cool. I mean, I swear there's like nothing that you can't do with a Raspberry Pi, man.
I agree.
It's just absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Like I'm always learning something new that you can do with the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. So
and here you're.
Yeah, I agree with you there, and just because of that, that's where I feel a little more comfortable. Where I've actually started a print in the morning, went to work, came home, took the print off the bed, completed, cleaned it up, and started the next print of whatever I wanted to do. So it's printing when I'm not at home. So it kind of makes it a little nicer because and how long something takes to print really comes down to how the settings that you use. How the different, what kind of, how strong your infill is, which is going to make how stiff and sturdy the part is, and how fine a detail you're trying to do, and all of that can change how long it takes to print something. But it's it's not like you're going to just hit and be done in 10 minutes on just about anything. It's even the little insulators that I made, these are just over an hour each to print. So I mean, everything takes a little bit of time, but you can, for the most part, they don't use I don't think it uses a ton of electricity either. And it stays pretty consistent and safe, and it's got automatic, there's safety features built into the programming on the firmware for it too, for heat runaway and all of that. So, and once you get your like you said, like I've got the Octoprint on there, it gives me control even when I'm not at the house. Hey, I see something's not right, something ain't working right, I can cancel it, and it'll automatically shut everything down and go into a cool down to where everything loses the temp, and then you can go home, just clean it up, do whatever, and start it back up. So you kind of almost can walk away and forget it, kind of thing.
Good deal. Yeah, I mean, with like I said, I'm wanting to get into 3D printing, and I had questions I wanted to ask anyway. So why not do it for a stream? Because I seen some of the really cool stuff that you had been making for ham radio. I mean, because of course that's what the whole reason I want it. I like antennas. I like to build antennas. So why not build everything on the antenna?
Exactly. That's been the bug for me. I want to be able to make it for myself, and that was the biggest push for it. The biggest reason I guess I really talked my wife into, hey, you don't have any ideas? This is a good idea. My kid wanted it too, but he hasn't really even tried to use it or show much interest since I got it. So I keep talking him into wanting to try to play with it too. But it's a fun little side hobby to go right along with ham radio, I think.
Absolutely. And a lot of people's got them to make their stuff with ham radio. A lot of people have been talking about it. So it's definitely something, you should be interested in checking out. with the different filaments and stuff like that,
Mhm.
you're just talking about how sturdy the parts are and stuff. What is the learning curve on that? How many times have you made something and the walls were just too weak and you had to redo it, or is that fairly easy to learn what you need for each project? Or
I think so. I mean, most of the stuff that I've made, I've just used the default infill setting, which is like a 20% infill, I think. And what it does is it actually just builds a structural framing, bridging inside the part. And you can select the different styles, whether it's a cube type or grid type. Most of everything I've been doing, I just use the cubic one because it seems to be the most sturdy anyway. And just doing 20% infill on everything that I've done seems to work really well. I think the antenna pan and tilt assembly that I did, I've got that printed at 50% infill, and I put a Elk Logic dual band antenna on it, and that thing, the servo motors are not uh, cautious by any means. They whip things right around quick, and I was surprised at how sturdy that has been at just 50% infill. So I haven't really this part here that I made for the end fed, trying to fit it around the bed rail.
right,
I cracked it a little bit, but this is a 20% infill and it's stiff. Or this might have been 30 that I did this at, and it's very stiff and strong. And this is just a prototype essentially, so I could figure out other measurements to tweak and make it better how I want it. So I wasn't concerned that it cracked, but it was because I was really trying to put the gorilla strength on it and reef it down around how I wanted it. And it just, I mean, it took a lot before it even did that. So that was the parts are pretty strong comparatively. Very surprising. I've been surprised at how sturdy a lot of the stuff has been without
yeah,
even trying to increase that. But it doesn't, minor increases really. Basically, it just makes that infill gridding smaller, so there's more of it, and it just makes it super sturdy. I mean, it takes a lot to crack and do something like that. It that was probably just shy of taking a hammer and thumping on it to make it crack like that. So I was,
right. And I love that you're like, and the wife don't want me to put an antenna on the truck, so I just it's kind of like the HOA won't let me put up an antenna, and you make this hide from the HOA antenna.
yeah, basically.
uh,
But I mean, I'm making it so I can use it outdoors too in a tree if I wanted, because
right,
I've got the eyelet that I put. I said, I'll throw this on there too. So if I want to hoist it up in a tree, I can print this another one of these and just throw a quick 239 in it. Throw your dipole wires on it and hoist it up in a tree for whatever band you want. So I'm kind of making it so it's interchangeable in a way, I guess. But I'm always thinking, always trying to. Well, if I do it this, I can have multiple uses for it too. So
good deal, good deal.
yeah,
All right, we're gonna start wrapping it up here, guys. If you got any questions that you want to get them in now, because I don't want to keep Aaron up really too late because he does have to work tomorrow, and he was great enough to come in and talk to us tonight.
yeah.
And I'm sure you Patreons will come and keep me up half the night on After Dark. You ain't doing it tonight. we're gonna set a limit tonight. I'll tell you. Listen, well, I mean, like most of the really cool conversations happen after a live stream. You get in
Oh
the
yeah.
back room and you sit there and you start talking. And I was like, this would be a really cool Patreon feature to let the Patreons come over and see what happens afterwards and let them ask questions and stuff like that. So I
Oh yeah.
started it. But I'll tell you what, man, some nights I'm like, guys, it's 3:30 in the morning. I gotta go to bed. I gotta work tomorrow. well,
Right.
well, actually, it's I got to get up and activate and then drive to work. I've started this new thing where I try to get an early morning activation, and in a way, it sucks because I'm limited to 50 contacts. It's 50 contacts, and I'm out. And
Right.
I'm used to just staying until I get everybody. But
Right.
most mornings that early, I don't really have. I think one time I've had to turn people away and be like, guys, I really got to go to work. Sorry. And
Right.
that ended up being 60 contacts, I think. But
Yeah.
you know, they understand. You know,
Oh yeah.
and they all know. You know, like, oh, he's only getting 50. We got to get in there early.
Right. Get that pile up going quick.
So same thing when I posted it on POTA this evening, I was like, I'm watching the Lightning app. This may be quick, and
Right.
I hit send, and then rah, here it comes.
Yeah. I think when I traveled downstate over by south of Rochester, I went to a park. We were taking my son over so he could do a 20-mile hike for his merit badge. So I brought my radio gear with me because it was Letchworth State Park, and I tried to I made a handful of contacts, but I didn't get to activate the park. And I think part of it was because I didn't only had a limited amount of time after doing the hike and stuff to get it, so we
Right.
back on the road for a 3-hour drive back home. But that was the only time I haven't activated a park yet. But I still had probably the most fun of any of the parks I've done. It was somewhere different. I set up the Wolf River coil and sat there at a park
And
bench overlooking the waterfalls and stuff, and sit there trying to make contacts.
and you know, and that's what matters is having fun.
Yep.
I'll tell you, some of my activations that have, well, I'll tell you the one really comes to mind that I really love is I threw everything in a backpack. I could have just walked in because it was the DeSoto Monument down in Florida, and it's pretty much it's a big area that you got.
Right.
But I threw everything in my backpack and I hiked way out there, and I got about 5-7 feet from the Gulf of Mexico, waves coming in. I'm sitting there and I set up and I'm like, I'm activating right here, and
Yeah.
it was just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good stuff. So what you got coming up on your channel before we get everybody out of here?
I mean, right now I'm kind of taking it a day at a time, depending on what I get done for some of the projects. Obviously, that little mini dipole for the truck antenna is a project that I'm working on for that. Continuation on that antenna rotor, and then probably doing some more of the some study sessions again on the extra class like I've been doing. And I did want to acknowledge Plasma Storm there. I think I'm about 3 hours from Rochester, not quite. I'm just south of Watertown, and I saw your comment earlier on the rotor about probably being a negative sign somewhere in the code, and that was kind of along the same lines that the buddy of mine and I were looking at from looking at some other basic sketches for servo motors. That was talking about a 90-degree swap used putting this type of nomenclature in the code. So that was kind of the same direction we were going, but I definitely appreciate the input because it kind of makes me feel I might have been on the right track.
Also, shout out to Plasma for dropping the link to your channel, and Brian for dropping your Etsy store. I appreciate you guys.
I appreciate that, guys.
Alrighty, guys, we're going to get out here. I appreciate everybody stopping by on my channel this Sunday. I'm not sure 100% of the time. I'll have to ask Pat. My channel will be hosting the Ham Radio Campfire, and between now and then, I will probably have a POTA activation video out. Other than that, same old, same old. I'm in a park every day. Come get me. Thanks, guys. 73, and thanks for sharing my adventure with me.
Thanks a lot, everybody.